It surprises me as much as it surprises you that I've never talked about the Lord of the Rings movies before. This feels like one of those glaring omissions that somehow at this point of time you'd think this had been cleared up. But neither in writing or on YouTube have I ever covered these movies before. So with the re-releases happening right now, the extended editions playing in theaters, I figured now is a time as good as any to finally talk about the Lord of the Rings movies. Starting of course with the first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring. And to just tell some stories around watching it for the very first time, the legacy it's had since then, which is extremely prominent, and the stuff that has come from it in the world of cinema since is to be remarked upon. But I remember the first time I watched anything to do with the Lord of the Rings, because at that time I didn't really know what to expect. I think that also has to do with the fact that it was an entry point into the franchise. But I also remember that time, those books, J.R.R. Tolkien's works, my family, they started out with it. And so obviously there was already an inbuilt fan base. At that point it was easy for my parents to say, hey, we're gonna grow you up on this. And then eventually I ended up growing up on Lord of the Rings because of them. And that led to me watching the movies, which I actually preferred watching the extended editions of those movies because to me, I always found them to be much more enriching experiences. I just, really feel like I get a complete experience with them. And even for talking about it in this video, I rewatched the extended edition. In fact, with my family very recently, because we've been through some format extensions over the years. We went from having the movie on video CD, which was 2 discs divided with this pan and scan aspect ratio where it was stretched out full screen DVDs, that nonsense. And then we eventually went to the extended edition DVDs, and then we went to the extended edition 4Ks, which is what I finally own them on now. And it's been such an interesting journey in those 20 years just to watch the Lord of the Rings. But going into Fellowship of the Ring again, you can't help but watch it and feel like every moment, every frame of it is a miracle. The fact that it was able to make as much as it had work in the exact best ways possible. There's not a single thing that's a miscalculation when it comes to the Fellowship of the Ring. And this is something that will be said about the next 2 movies as well, but we'll get to that. And I think that has to do with the fact that everyone from Peter Jackson to the incredible cast from Elijah Wood to Ian McKellen to Orlando Bloom to Sean Astin to Christopher Lee to Hugo Weaving to Viggo Mortensen to John Rhys-Davies to Liv Tyler to Billy Boyd to Dominic Monaghan, everybody in this movie is so good. And everybody has so much love for the source material, and it's very easy to notice that. Every moment has that same amount of love. It really feels like a project that was created by people who really all wanted to be there and bring Tolkien's works to screen in the most, wonderful way possible. And I think that makes this trilogy a truly perfect trilogy in my eyes. But Fellowship did a really great job of setting up the journey, starting from the history of the One Ring to eventually it landing up with Bilbo Baggins, him eventually giving it to Frodo, and then Frodo taking it towards Mount Doom. The forming of the Fellowship along the way is wonderful stuff, and you were so invested in every character out the gate. And if you ask me to ask, who's my favorite character in Lord of the Rings, I wouldn't have an answer for you because I feel like I just love everyone just as much. And that is just a testament to how wonderfully they're all brought to life. From Frodo to Sam to Pippin to Merry, Aragorn, Gandalf the Grey, Legolas, Gimli, Boromir. There's not a single point of time where I see any of these characters and think, I don't like you as much or you as much. I feel like there's this mutual love for all of them. And because you care so much about these characters, in sequences when they're in constant peril, you are worried about their safety. Which of course leads me to the next talking point, which is, Jesus Christ, these action sequences and these worlds, the visuals are incredibly dazzling. It is remarkable how even after all this time, you're watching some of the scenes on display over here and you can't help but feel like they look like they were shot yesterday. That's the best praise that I can give about it. Not a single thing in it feels like it's aged in any way. Even when it comes to moments where, it feels like the CGI is new at the time where they're working on certain things, it looks extremely immaculate. This is something that's coming up more in the next movie. I'll talk about that with motion capture and stuff. But even over here, especially when it comes to scenes like the Balrog, I mean, it's just amazing. Like that whole sequence in Moria feels like, again, a sequence that was shot 12 hours ago. And the flair that Jackson brings to this, and of course the sweeping score from Howard Shore, which is just about the best thing that ever happened in the history of film scoring. It's also wonderfully realized, and it leads to some incredible sequences. Of course, I already mentioned the Balrog sequence, but one of the other outstanding sequences is Arwen's ride to Rivendell, where she's trying to save Frodo after he's been stabbed by one of the ring wraiths. That entire sequence is incredible. Of course, the Moria sequence, the entirety of it, phenomenal stuff. The ambush that happens in what seems to be the ruins of Numenor, phenomenal as well. There's really no shortage of greatness when it comes to the Fellowship of the Ring. And the crazy thing is that at the time, it was just the start of that trilogy. Like at that point, you had no idea just how the next two were going to be pulled off. And those are stories in themselves that I cannot wait to talk more about with you guys. And it is one of those movies that I can honestly say brought upon that inspiration to just do more when it came to film over the years. Bring it more, prominently out in terms of life in general. Because I feel like I'm like the millionth person to say this, but there is so much that you can see in these movies and you walk out of it going, I want to make a movie. I want to make a spectacle that's nearly as good as this. I mean, when you can have me caring about just even the negative characters, like the main orc in this movie, for instance, I mean, being led by Saruman as well, like, it's just, that is the level of detail and intricacy that is brought to this, that is difficult to shake off, in my humble opinion. But I feel like that's a majority opinion. I don't know too many people who don't like the Fellowship of the Ring. In fact, I don't think I know anyone who doesn't, like this movie, or especially the other two movies. Like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, most of the time you will find is undisputedly loved by all. And for good reason. I think it is a genuine, remarkable feat of a film. I think it is one of the greatest movies of all time, and it absolutely deserves the standing that it has achieved over the years. And I love it so much. And if you're getting a chance to see it in theaters this weekend or, in subsequent weekends, depending on how they're doing this, then I highly recommend going and seeing it. Even if you've seen it before, definitely go check it out again. It's always great to see it with, hopefully, packed theater with fans. It'll be awesome. And I hope that you have that story to tell. If you're watching it for the first time ever, then I hope you enjoy the ride. I hope you enjoy everything that comes along with it. All the quotes that you're gonna take away from it. Guys, thank you very much as always for watching. Look forward to videos on the Two Towers and the Return of the King very soon. Can't wait to talk to you about those two movies. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. Thank you very much once again. And I will see you guys at the movies.